as an author, Antarctica provides the perfect backdrop to an action and conspiracy thriller, and I'd like to talk a little bit about why that is. So Antarctica, by its very positioning, is extremely isolated from the rest of the world. So if there's a remote camp set up somewhere in Antarctica, particularly away from the coastline, it is going to be very difficult for help to reach the people in the story. Add to this if there's bad weather, or if you're moving out of the summer season, and it almost becomes, well, in fact, it does become impossible for them to get help and assistance. It's not like setting a thriller, say, for instance, in London, where you can pick up the phone and dial 999, and then everyone comes to your rescue. That doesn't happen. The other thing that I think is really fascinating for putting pressure on central characters in thrillers is that what Antarctica does is it already provides a threatening and savage environment. So the extreme cold, the rapidity with which the weather will change, blizzards coming in, and of course whiteouts, which can be very life-threatening. All these things add pressure. And that's what a thriller author is doing with their central character by taking a character like Olivia Wolfe, who is the investigative journalist in Devour, taking her and planting her in Antarctica, somewhere where she's never been before, immediately puts her under stress. And then if you add to this, as I have in the opening of the book, there is a possibility that the Lake Ellsworth expedition in the story is being sabotaged and that one of the team has been murdered. Well, that's where you get a great deal of suspense and intrigue at the very beginning of the story. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to pass on to Professor Martin Siegert, who has done numerous expeditions to Antarctica. And I'd be very interested to know from him, what is it about Antarctica that you found or do find so fascinating?
So Antarctica is appealing from a scientific perspective, from a research perspective, for a number of reasons. Firstly, it's just the location itself. It's an ancient environment. There are very few places on the planet that have been untouched by human presence. Most of the land surface on other parts of the planet have been modified hugely over the last few thousand years. But Antarctica is ancient. Surface of the Antarctic continent, the mountains, the ice sheets would look very similar as it does today a million years ago, right? And so it's unchanged.
It's amazing, isn't it? The last untouched wilderness.
Really. It is. It really is. It's a frontier. But changes are happening in Antarctica, and those changes affect the rest of the world. There's enough ice stored in Antarctica that if all melted, all of it, sea levels globally will go up by over 60 meters. So what happens in Antarctica changes the world, and that's why we can't consider it as an isolated place of no relevance to anywhere. And that's what drives scientists to try and understand Antarctica more and more. One of the things that's appealing from my perspective within subglacial lakes is that there may be records of past changes to the Antarctic ice sheet over the last few million years. And if we can determine the last time that the ice sheet melted, then that can give us an idea about the future of the ice sheet.
Well, I mean, I'm also fascinated by all the scientific research that goes on in Antarctica. And in fact, the comment that you made earlier about all the ice that's in Antarctica, I don't think, I certainly didn't realise until I went there how enormous the continent is. I mean, it's about the size of Europe. And if you think of that covered in, say, 2, 3, 4 kilometres of ice, you've got an awful lot of ice. And as you said, if that melts into the sea, and sea levels will rise, and that affects everybody on this planet. And it would be, in fact, catastrophic. And interestingly enough, that is actually one of the topics of one of my previous thrillers set in Antarctica, Thirst. So thank you very much for raising that.